recent times, feminists have started to grapple with a very difficult question. As we all know, feminism is a layered and nuanced ideology that always finds itself at the forefront of the most important and challenging discussions of the day. So here's the quandary they're dealing with now. How can a feminist woman be empowered while still being a materialistic cheap ass? Is it possible to be a strong, independent woman without also having to pay for dinner? You know, this is the dilemma. It's the great philosophical debate. Feminists are in a difficult position because they've insisted for many years that they don't need no man, that they're a bunch of girl bosses, large and in charge. They declare that the old codes of chivalry and patriarchal and paternalistic, are patriarchal and paternalistic, and they have to be abolished. They shouted from the mountaintop that they are exactly equal to men, the same as men in every respect, and they certainly don't need a man to take care of them or provide for them. They have growled and they have shrieked and they have made their voices heard. And then, to their horror, many men started to take them seriously. Men listened to these protestations and they said, okay, well, if you say so, as you wish, you can have what you want. Which means, among other things, that when the bill is put down on the table, many men will not instinctively reach for it anymore. They will let the independent girl boss pay the tab, or at least pay half of it. But feminists have recoiled at this development. No, they cry, we want to be independent, but not like this. Not if it means I have to pay for my own Santa Fe salad at Chili's. But how do they make this case? Can they really become a damsel in distress as soon as the bill is placed on the table and then get right back to being empowered and progressive a few minutes later? How does that work? Well, different feminists have come up with different ways of grappling with this important question. Here's one influencer on TikTok giving her answer. Watch.
The thing that I have realized about this topic is that there are so many women that really do advocate for not going 50-50, right? And for me, I definitely went through I'm a feminist. I shouldn't have an issue going 50-50 phase, right? When I was younger. But recently I started to realize just how difficult it was accepting going 50-50 with men. And I have come to the realization that it is because even as a feminist, it is the only benefit women reap out of the patriarchy. A benefit we did not create the rules for. Y'all did. But it is still a benefit that women get from the patriarchy. So whenever men start advocating for what about equality? Pick up this check or whatever. When I hear that, it's like, you're literally trying to rid me of the only benefit I get out of the patriarchy. The only, think about it for a second. Is there any other benefit we get out of the patriarchy?
Let me step in there for a moment. I'll answer your question, ma'am. But first, I have to point out how, by your own logic anyway, this is the most pathetic stance I've ever seen anyone take. Because by your telling, we are a patriarchal society, and the patriarchy is an abject evil, you say, and yet you wish to extract whatever benefits you can from it. This thing is evil and terrible and should be dismantled, but I also want to reap its rewards. This makes you significantly worse than the patriarchal men who, according to you, uphold an oppressive system, but at least, we don't see it as oppressive. You do see it that way, and yet you also uphold it, just so that you can get a free meal at the Cheesecake Factory. So pathetic doesn't even begin to describe it. But to your question, is there any other benefit that you get out of what you call the patriarchy? The answer is yes, a few. There are a few. Benefits like, the house that you're currently sitting in, every bridge you've ever driven across, every car you've ever driven in, electricity, indoor plumbing, democracy, freedom, civilization itself, just to get the list started. So all of these things were all largely invented, established, built, maintained by societies that you would call patriarchal. So the patriarchy, as you define it, has given you basically everything of value in your entire life. So what else has it given you? Everything. Every single thing you like has been given to you by what you would describe as the patriarchy. Other than that, sure, I guess it hasn't done much for you. But TikTok isn't the only place where this debate is raging. Over at the LA Times, they are grappling with the same issue. A new column poses the question this way: should men pay on dates as reparations for the gender wage gap? The writer Jean Guerrero explains, quote, For years, I split the bill on dates. As a Latina from a lineage of women whose lives have been micromanaged by family patriarchs, I thought I was breaking bad generational patterns by interacting with men as equals rather than as providers. But recently, I started getting pushback from some of my friends. They argued that because of the persisting gender pay gap, it's actually now properly feminist to expect men to pay on first dates and contribute more financially in relationships. One friend instructed me, quote, "Don't even think about reaching for your purse." The thought of possibly coercing a man into paying for my dinner, however, just seemed wrong. Still, this discussion did make me wonder, should I expect men to pay on dates as a form of reparations for generational harm? Yes, the harm, again, of building every home and every bridge and every airplane. That's what men are doing, fighting and dying in every war, keeping all the lights on, etc. Such great harm that men have perpetrated against women. Every society on earth would collapse in like 5 seconds without men doing all the things that men do. All the things that men do and that men almost exclusively do, in fact. But all of this somehow amounts to generational harm. That's the argument. So let me see if I can lend some clarity to the situation. So there are a few things going on here. First, we see the propensity on the left to, in so many cases, dismantle something and then try to recreate kind of a simulacrum of that thing that they just destroyed. So they have no ideas of their own. They have no real vision of any kind. So they often end up plagiarizing the very ideas that they oppose. That's why many feminists have ended up right back where it started, expecting men to pay for dinner. The difference is that now the reasons behind this expectation, the underlying framework, is flimsy and superficial and ridiculous. So in the past, men paid for dinner because it was considered a man's duty to provide. It was his place. It was his role. There was dignity in it. There was a long tradition behind it. There was the noble and heroic concept of chivalry. All of that went into the fact that a man would clearly pay for dinner. Well, feminism hates everything noble and heroic and masculine and traditional, so all of that had to go. But it still wants free meals at Bonefish Grill. So the expectations of chivalry were reinstated without the philosophy of chivalry underlying them. So now men are expected to pay, but not for noble and strong and clear and traditional reasons, but for whiny and weak and petty reasons. We went from it's a man's duty to provide, which is a strong and clear and positive and truly empowering vision of what the sexes are supposed to be doing, to now it's, well, you have to pay to heal my generational trauma, which is unclear and weak and resentful and petty and negative. Feminism uprooted all of the trees from the forest and then tried to put the trees back without the roots. But they're not trees anymore. They're just big logs sitting precariously on top of the soil. And this is the case not just with paying for dinner. I mean, the paying for dinner thing is a microcosm of the confusion that has come to define pretty much every aspect of the male-female interaction. Every aspect is now a source of uncertainty and debate. Men and women don't know how to interact with each other anymore. They don't know how to date each other. They don't know what their expectations should be and what their responsibilities are and what expectations they're supposed to be fulfilling from the other person and which expectations are reasonable or not. They don't know any of that. And these are all things that, again, up until feminism, these are things that people didn't worry about because it was all known. So all of these things in the dating world, particularly these sources of anxiety and the questions, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what they're thinking. What you have to realize is that if you go back not that far into the past, these anxieties almost didn't exist at all because everybody knew what they were supposed to do. They knew what their roles were. But feminism tore all that to shreds. And as always with the left, they replaced it with basically nothing. This newfound freedom isn't making anybody happy. It's only created anxiety and paralysis. We didn't have this problem under the old system with the old concept of gender roles. Men knew what was expected of them. Women knew what their own part was. There was no awkwardness when the bill came. And with this basic understanding of their own respective roles and responsibilities, they could move on and live their lives and get to know each other without the anxiety and the stilted, weird uncertainty that defines the male-female interaction in the modern age. So thank you again, feminism. You made everything worse and nothing better. You didn't solve any problems, but you did manage to create a bunch of new problems that didn't exist before. And for that reason, feminism is, once again, certainly not for the first time and certainly not for the last, canceled.